Welcome to another episode of CineCringe for another week of terrible movies. My name is George, and with me is Chris, who's going to tell us what the hell we're doing this week.
Ahoy there! We are watching this week The Wicker Man remake by Neil LaBute, who until this point was a director of low-budget indie character dramas. He then moved on to this movie for some reason. I don't know what brought him here other than that he wanted some of that sweet studio money.
That's fair.
The Wicker Man is a remake of a 1971 or something, 1972, which is kind of a cult classic and a very odd little film and a very wonderful film. And so I guess we should do a spoilers warning at this point, because as we talk through the plot of the new one, we're going to end up, spoiling not just this one, but also the old one, which is arguably a better film.
Yeah, and also, shout out to our neck of the woods, because this whole thing is filmed in Vancouver Island.
Yeah. That's Canadian patriotism for you.
Not a lot happens. It's basically just Nicolas Cage plays a police officer who, who's haunted by the memory of a traffic accident, essentially, and
slash explosion.
Slash explosion. But the traffic accident slash explosion doesn't really play into the plot. It's just a thing that keeps flashing back to. And eventually he gets contacted by his ex for her missing child. So he goes on to this little island to find the missing girl, only to find out that it was a trap laid for him to be sacrificed by this, I guess, pagan cult, so that they can have a better harvest next year.
But he maintains that killing him will not bring back their goddamn honey. Unless we forget the one other big element that's revealed partway through is that the girl in question that he's been brought here to find turns out to be his own daughter, who in the end, unfortunately for him, turns out to be more aligned with the island and, in fact, throws the torch that lights him on fire. I warned you, George, that I would have a little bit of a different approach today. When I watched this movie last night, I had a blast, and I sort of loved it. It is a very bad movie. It is a folk horror movie that is neither scary nor does anything interesting with the folk elements. And I'm also going to drop on you a fan theory about this film that I think is an absolute first. I searched around and I don't see it mentioned anywhere on the internet, and I think it's gonna blow your mind and possibly reconstitute your entire view of cinema.
Of all the bad films we've watched so far, I mean, of all four, this is definitely the most enjoyable because of Nicolas Cage, because he's just fun to watch, even in a bad movie. This is, while the other ones felt like I was forced to eat dog food, this is more like eating shitty pizza.
Yeah.
It's still pizza.
Shitty pizza, yeah.
It didn't take very long. It took about a minute before I start laughing. We're still just looking at production companies. The movie begins with papyrus font.
Papyrus.
Which is always a strong start.
Which had to already be hilarious in 2006, right?
Yeah, it's already out of date.
It would have been funny then.
Don't worry, it comes with the territory. I'll get it.
Just a truck happened to be driving on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah, this truck had kind of a trolley problem. Do I hit Nick Cage or do I hit this woman and her young daughter? And the truck driver, I guess, was a Nick Cage fan because they chose to kill the others. The car is burning. The girl is staring. Nick Cage is reaching. Why does she not want to get out? Why did any of this happen this way? Is this a dream?
My theory of why she doesn't want to get out is actually because the hole that he's created in the window is way too small. And she would just be shredded by the glass.
She'd rather be exploded than cheese grated on her way out.
Yeah.
Wow. The plot thickens. Didn't even know you had a plot.
No kidding.
That felt like fourth wall breaking, and the cop is just talking about this adaptation.
And it's again, I put it to you, audience, would that line be in anything but a comedy? I also just found this dude so funny in general. The cop, I love his voice, I love his facial expressions. I thought he was just great in general.
Yeah, but his character is also just an idiot, because this happens.
I mean, you're gonna blow this off, right?
Well, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
You haven't seen this girl in, like, what? Forever?
Her kid's missing, Pete, okay?
Yeah. Fuck the missing kid. Who does this woman think she is? Like, breaking up with you and now asking you, a cop, to find her missing child? It's insane, right?
Another thing that I really loved about this movie, and you already mentioned, George, that it's shot in the Pacific Northwest, but I thought it was really funny that he was like, okay, so where would a pagan cult be? Definitely near Vancouver.
I'm pretty sure there is still an ongoing cult in interior BC, isn't there? There's a famous one that's like 12 something.
Yes, you're referring to the 12 Tribes, which is a
Right.
globe-spanning organization, and also run a restaurant in my hometown of Nelson, BC. If you attend their restaurant, especially if you are a young man, alone, perhaps rougher looking, you are likely to be offered literature. And that's as far as my experience goes, so that's as far as I will characterize them.
Did you walk in one time?
I have been
rough?
offered some literature.
I know it's supposed to be showing his like traumatic experience with the accident, but the combination of his intense hate there, followed by the sudden truck.
Not to mention that this is not the last time we get this.
This hateful stare that he has just doesn't match what he's seeing. Do you know what I mean?
So we get to the island, and he has this first sort of encounter with the island folk. Again, I found myself on very wobbly ground as to what the tone was, because we see them talking, and it's kind of weird, and they're kind of friendly, but also kind of secretive. And then it really tips over into where they're doing these like malevolent, like Darth Sidious grins.
What's in the bag? A shark or something?
The shark.
And his first best guess as to what's in the bag. He's looking these women right in the face, and they're so obviously evil that I, again, could only think that it was a comedy about, I guess, like, a man who's kind of bumbling.
If this movie is trying to be taken seriously in its tone, this whole village is shit at lying.
Right.
They're really, really bad at it.
I'm gonna start getting into my arguments for this being a good movie too soon, but I think he is totally oblivious to the possibility of danger here, because he's surrounded by these folksy women. And I totally agree. For so long, it just seems like there are obvious markers of the danger he's in, and he has no idea.
Yeah. And then in walks his ex, who, from this shot onwards, just perpetually, at least to me, looks half-baked.
I think you all should know that I'm here on business.
This is just one of many moments where he whips out his badge, he shows his authoritative policeman approach, and it all just kind of falls apart. Everything he ever does just kind of falls apart.
This is a weird thing to do, even if you're not talking to a bunch of cultists. Just slamming a mug on a bee.
It's a weird thing to do. What do you got against bees, Cage? So this is, other than the nature of the cult itself, this is the one big kind of deviation from the original film. Because in the original, he's just looking for a girl. But here there's this big complication that it turns out that the girl is his daughter. And I thought that was an interesting update. So this is a great example of why this might be a stoner comedy. Or I don't know how to think about this movie, but it's not a horror movie. And I guess that's what you keep coming back to with this movie, right? It's like, this is, I guess, the most serious, dramatic thing that happens in the first half hour of the movie. And it's literally just that some boards collapse and his like legs swing around for a few seconds. And then he climbs up. They're not like horror movie level stakes. It's not a scene that would be in a horror movie. He walks in, he sees some potatoes. A floorboard falls out. There's something odd going on in the world of the Wicker Man. So then we get to a sequence where we get to see what education is like in this village. And here was, for me, the tipping point where I was 100% certain about what the movie was doing.
What man represents in his purest form.
Phallic symbol, phallic symbol.
This sequence is such an over-the-top depiction, an absurdly matriarchal, man-hating, all of the epithets that are thrown at feminists. This is what this scene is. This is not a scene that could possibly be in a traditional horror movie. It's a cartoonish image of what a society like this might be like.
If you say that 3 times in front of a mirror, Nicolas Cage will appear dressed up as a dick. Which reminds me, if you're interested in listening to the full-length discussion of this episode, you can find it on our Patreon. The link is on screen and in the description down below. If you go over there, you will get the entire recording in an audio format like a podcast. Check it out, support us, help us keep doing this. We really appreciate it. Anyways, so this whole scene at the graveyard here, she has maybe, I think, 10 lines. She actually manages to finish this one sentence.
The liars, they can't accept her, or they seem to blame her for all... Edward, I think they're gonna hurt her. Or... I haven't, Edward. I promise, I haven't. She's...
It's not a choice. Because it's really infuriating to watch.
The entire investigation plot that takes up the second act is basically Nick Cage talking to a woman, getting a bunch of evasive answers, and then being distracted by something she does at the end and moving on without realizing how many questions have not been answered.
And he gets flustered really easily by those things. Yeah, and then there's just kind of nothing happens for quite a while. It's mostly just him looking confused and perplexed as he's wandering around, and a bunch of residents lying to him terribly. Until we get to this scene.
Well, I obviously just wanted to highlight the classic terrible scare moment that comes at the end of this. But the scenes that are horror-y are not scary. But I felt a very, and here I'm leaning on the stoner comedy thing again, this movie's just like a very relaxed watch where you get to see ridiculous things happen to Nicolas Cage and him enter into this absurd world. I honestly just had comfy good vibes watching this movie.
It made me laugh pretty hard quite a few times, especially this scene, just this...
God damn it!
Very dramatic zoom out, but juxtaposition with how kind of non-reacting Nicolas Cage is, and then immediately follow with a god damn it. I also feel like his god damn it is just him realizing he's going to be made into another meme.
Every time he gets around on this island, whether it be by ridiculous bicycle or whether it just be a long, awkward shot of him running, he looks ridiculous. His quest looks ridiculous. His investigation looks ridiculous. I think these are jokes at his expense.
And then there's this classic bad movie trope where your character don't hear a loud thing until they bump into it, which turned out to be a hive of bees. And then he proceeds to escape from it by running into the field.
The bees.
Now, this imagery I liked because this whole movie actually has quite a few honeycombed imagery, which isn't in the original film, by the way. The original film, I think it was about apples. Yeah, and this one is bees for, I don't know why they changed it, but at least they stuck to that theme.
They changed it for a really stupid joke. I'm going to reveal another part of my argument now. Are you familiar with the term honeypot?
Ah.
Because I'm going to tell you that's what's going on. He's been honeypotted here.
Right. I mean, including Sister Honey.
Absolutely.
Which shows up quite... That makes sense. That makes sense. And after his grave digging scene, he gets trapped and is submerged in water the entire night.
Yeah, fuck.
And he's not shaking or cold from hypothermia. He's not sapped of his energy. He in fact recovers fairly quickly.
Yeah, he's jogging.
Which then immediately leads to one of the most enduring 21st century cultural milestone.
How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
I don't know!
It's a classic moment. It's a classic moment. And this is the sort of thing Nick Cage can just conjure these moments out of thin air. No question. The script just said, how'd it get burned? And you could have brought Bradley Cooper in here and he would have been like, how'd it get burned? But Nick Cage can just conjure magic.
As he breaks into Sister Summer Zile's house, and then we get this bizarre sequence, which I think is the director's idea of a shock image sequence. There hasn't really been any tension build up to this point, and these imageries just kind of mean nothing. In fact, this whole scene has about as much tension as soggy bread.
Yep, I totally agree with you.
Get off the bike. Step away from the bike.
Another in the grand tradition of Nick Cage pulling guns on totally innocent people who aren't doing very much. This is just another instance where he deploys all his policeman, sexy Nick Cage action star power, and it's just hilarious. It's not, you can't take the sequence seriously at all.
Because it doesn't match. It doesn't match what's been happening even in that scene up to that second.
It's just a woman she's just trying to get past him with a bike.
Yeah.
And he pulls a gun.
And after that, for about, 5-10 minutes of this film, it's just Nicolas Cage running around, kicking doors and yelling at people, which I feel like they just filmed him on a weekend bender.
I have no means to understand this, but that it is comedy.
Yeah.
There's no suspense. There's no escalation. It is just him bothering the residents of the town in hilarious ways.
Well, I think what it's intended to be a very dramatic moment is just hilarious to me.
I'm gonna go for it now, because Nick Cage is punching women, he's about to get in a bear suit, he's about to dropkick Lily Sobieski into a wall of pictures. This is a movie about a hypermasculine image played by a man who at this time was still a hypermasculine action star. I believe that this entire movie is just one joke, and that joke is at the expense of Nicolas Cage, the action star. He's running around, he's solving the plot, which turns out to just have been a bunch of fake clues planted for him anyway. The women tell him he's not making any progress. They openly tell him that he's Don Quixote, who is someone who tilts at windmills. He's using all his cop powers, he's tearing masks off, he's punching people, he's drop-kicking people, and it's just hilarious. And the reason it's hilarious, I think, is because we're seeing how ridiculous all those things are in another context. He's doing normal action hero stuff, but none of it makes sense. I think the movie is a giant meta joke about action heroes and about our expectations for a masculine hero going into this feminine world.
You know, I can buy that. That really, really makes sense, especially with this scene.
What is it? What's wrong, sister?
Let me tell you about the bear suit. What is Nick Cage disguised as? An apex predator. What is he doing through the whole movie? He's thinking of himself as the apex predator, but actually he is the prey. They, the rest of them, are disguised as prey, but they're disguises, and in the next moment, the disguises come off, and all of that apex predator energy that he thinks he has as Mr. Big Balls Cop coming to this island of women just fades away.
You're selling this on me. I'm buying it.
It's still not necessarily a good movie if this is the intent, because it obviously, like, didn't deliver what people wanted.
And then, finally, we get to what I'm gonna say is the eighth wonder of the modern world.
Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes!
Even for 2006, these digital bees are bad. You know, they have no motion blur to them. They cast no shadow.
So here's an odd one. I watched the theatrical cut of The Wicker Man. What we are watching now is the unrated cut of The Wicker Man.
Oh, okay.
When it came out in theaters, the Not the Bees scene was not in the movie. We hear just audio, like flashback audio of the torture scene.
Interesting. I did not know that. You definitely like this a lot more than I did.
I'm not saying I wasn't bored through long stretches that you mentioned. There are parts of this movie that are indefensible and bad. Would you recommend this movie to someone as like a fun, dumb watch?
Yes, I would. But I don't recommend watching it alone. I recommend watching it with at least a couple of friends while having some drinks or, you know, high.
All right, you ready for me to blow your mind?
Go
No
on.
one has said this before. You're hearing it here first. In a 2012 interview with Empire magazine, Nicolas Cage said that he wanted to do a sequel to The Wicker Man. He said, and I quote, "I would like to hook up with one of the great Japanese filmmakers, like the master that made Ringu, and take The Wicker Man to Japan. Except, this time, he's a ghost." And I see that you already see where I'm going with this.
Yes.
I'm going to the 2021 Shion Sono film, Prisoners of the Ghostland. Is about a man who is brought into a patriarchal cult overseen by a man known as the Governor, and this man kidnaps young girls. So instead of a matriarchal cult where the girls are free, we have a patriarchal cult where the girls are enslaved. And so once again, we have Nick Cage as a leather-jacketed masculine hero entering into this new world where all the rules are topsy-turvy. In his most hyper-masculine moment, when he's being very sexually aggressive, his suit blows off his testicle. So once again, we have Nick Cage kind of being made a fool of, and he ultimately returns with them as equals in an uprising against the patriarchal society. So I believe that in this film, when what I'm calling the spiritual sequel to Wicker Man, we see the catharsis and we see the resolution that Nicolas Cage's character was denied in the first film. He was not able to integrate into a society with rules different than his own, and he burned for it. Now in this one, he is able to integrate into a society with rules different from his own, and he opens up a happier, freer world. I have a smoking gun on this theory. As he's setting out, he's gifted with this awesome muscle car that goes with his awesome leather jacket suit, and he's gonna rip around like Mad Max in this awesome car. Instead of going to the car, he runs over and picks up a different mode of transportation, and that is a bicycle. And I put it to you that the only reason that can be in Prisoners of the Ghostland is because Nicolas Cage, after 10 long years of dreaming, made Prisoners of the Ghostland in Japan. Nicolas Cage, if you're listening, please confirm or deny.
I like it. I really, really like it.
Oh yeah, also Prisoners of the Ghostland. It's not a good movie, unfortunately.
No. How would you rate this movie?
I'm gonna give it a I don't know. 2 out of 10 as a horror movie. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 as a laid back comedy. How about you?
Well, my original rating for it was that it was about as fun as an anaphylactic shock, which is what Nicolas Cage would have gone into, or his character would have gone into during the bee helmet scene. But after your entire thing of theories and meta commentary and connections to another film, yeah, I gotta change that. I'm not sure anymore.
Yes.
I feel like the movie, when I was watching it, was about as fun as an anaphylactic shock, but your theories is the EpiPen.
Yes, we're doing it. More fun than anaphylactic shock.
So I guess that wraps up this episode on The Wicker Man. What are we doing next week? Yes, we are doing the much forgotten, I think at this point, Wild Wild West starring Will Smith. I guess that's it. Thank you for watching. Remember to press like and subscribe, and yeah, let us know what you think of Chris's theory.
I have no sign off. Not the bees! Ah, God, they're in my eyes!